They called Glasshaven Rehabilitation a place for healing, a sanctuary, where the rich washed away their guilt behind glass walls and designer smiles. But when Detective Clara Vale walked through those silver doors, she felt something watching her, not through the cameras, but from the mirrors themselves. Every patient here swore to face the mirror test, a therapy meant to cleanse the soul. But one woman never left her session alive. Her name was Evelyn Ross, billionaire's wife, patient number 47. Official reports called it suicide. But the last thing she wrote said something else. If you see this, it means the test has already started. Now Clara must uncover the truth before the reflections start whispering her name, because in Glasshaven, mirrors don't just show who you are, they show what you've done. The morning air tasted like salt and antiseptic. Detective Clara Vale drove along the winding coastal road, her car slicing through the mist that clung to the cliffs. Below, the ocean crashed violently, the sound of a world that never rested. She pressed her foot harder on the pedal, feeling a dull ache behind her eyes. Glasshaven wasn't on any map. It was a private rehabilitation center for the wealthy, where addiction, guilt, and scandal quietly disappeared behind glass walls and clean signatures. Only the elite could afford to be healed here. Clara's assignment was simple, at least on paper. Investigate a patient death that had been quietly ruled a suicide. The woman's name was Evelyn Ross, wife of billionaire tech mogul Adrian Ross. Her overdose had been neat, too neat, and Clara didn't believe in neat endings. As she parked, the building loomed, a fortress of mirrored glass reflecting the gray sky. It looked less like a hospital and more like a shrine built to hide sins. A nurse in a white coat met her at the gate, her smile too bright, her hands trembling slightly. "Detective Vale," the nurse said softly. "Welcome to Glasshaven. Dr. Harlow will meet you inside." Inside, the halls were silent. No crying, no footsteps, no chaos. Every sound seemed absorbed by the glass. Each room was perfect, sterile, emotionless. Cameras followed her as she walked. Somewhere, someone was watching. Dr. Lucien Harlow appeared tall, calm, with the kind of practiced confidence that came from years of lying kindly. "We do our best here," he said, leading her toward an elevator. But Evelyn's case was unfortunate. "Unfortunate?" Clara repeated. "She died under your supervision." Harlow's lips twitched. "People who come here bring their own ghosts, Detective. We simply provide the mirrors." The elevator doors opened to the second floor. The walls were lined with reflective panels, thousands of them. As Clara passed, her own reflection multiplied endlessly, each version of herself slightly distorted. Her instincts buzzed. Something about this place felt wrong, too controlled, too perfect. "Where's her room?" she asked. "End of the west wing," Harlow said. "But we've already cleaned it. You won't find much." She smiled faintly. "Doctor, I always find something." At the end of the corridor, Clara entered Evelyn's room. It smelled faintly of lavender and alcohol wipes. A white bed, a single painting of an ocean wave, and a vanity mirror, spotless, gleaming. But when she leaned closer, she noticed faint fingernail scratches on the frame. 4 of them. Deep. She pulled out her camera, took a picture, then crouched down. A single folded note lay beneath the bed. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. "If you see this, it means I finally passed the test." Her pulse quickened. "Test? What test?" Behind her, the door clicked shut. She turned sharply. Through the mirror, she saw someone standing in the hallway, a woman with pale skin, long dark hair, and eyes that looked too alive to belong to a ghost. Evelyn Ross, or someone who wanted her to think so. Detective Clara Vale barely blinked as the figure in the mirror stared back at her. The woman's reflection stood still, too still. A faint smile appeared on those pale lips, and then, as suddenly as it came, the image dissolved into her own reflection again. "Herr Pulshammer. Hallucination? No, Not possible. She'd been awake for 30 hours, but she knew the difference between fatigue and fear. Clara took a slow step back, eyes scanning the mirror's edge. Tiny cracks ran through the surface, like spider veins, hidden beneath a perfect polish. She brushed her hand against the glass. It was warm. Behind her, the door opened. Nurse Lydia peeked in, her smile practiced. "Everything all right, Detective?" Clara hid the note in her pocket. "You cleaned the room after the death?" "Yes, completely. Doctor's orders." "Then why are there fingernail marks on the mirror?" Lydia's expression faltered for a moment. Then she said softly, "Because she didn't want to leave." Clara's brow furrowed. "Meaning?" But Lydia had already stepped out, closing the door quietly. The next stop was the observation room. Through the tinted glass, Clara saw a row of monitors displaying live feeds from each patient's chamber. Most showed calm figures meditating, reading, or staring into their reflections. One screen, however, was blank. "Patient 47, Evelyn Ross." Clara pointed. "Why is this camera feed off?" Dr. Harlow's voice came from behind her. "Because there's nothing left to see, Detective. The system shuts down automatically after a death, or after a cover-up," she muttered. He ignored the jab. "You're welcome to check her session data if that helps you sleep." Clara sat before the console. The session file was labeled Mirror Therapy Log #47. The footage began. Evelyn sitting quietly, her reflection calm. At minute 4, Evelyn whispered something. The system's mic barely caught it. Clara leaned close. The audio repeated, distorted. "They said the mirrors only show what's inside, but mine shows someone else." Static cut through the feed. Then, a sharp gasp. The camera flickered and Evelyn's reflection turned its head toward the lens while her real body sat still. Clara froze. The timestamp on the footage was the exact minute Evelyn died. That night, Clara stayed at Glasshaven's guest quarters. Rain battered the mirrored windows, creating waves of distorted light. She tried to review the case notes again, but kept hearing the echo of that distorted voice. Someone else. She opened her laptop and ran the notes ink through a chemical trace. It wasn't from any regular pen. It contained micro-level silver dust, the kind used in reflective surfaces. Whoever wrote it had done so on a mirror first. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single text appeared. "You shouldn't have watched that video." She looked out the window. Only her own reflection stared back. Then, from the far side of the glass, her reflection blinked first. The storm raged through the night, pounding against Glasshaven's mirrored walls. Detective Clara Vale didn't sleep. Every flash of lightning turned her reflection into a stranger eyes, tired, face pale, doubt crawling beneath her skin. She replayed the text message over and over. "You shouldn't have watched that video." Someone inside Glasshaven was watching her. At 3:12 a.m., she left her room and walked down the empty corridor. The floor shone like wet glass, and her footsteps echoed like whispers. Every few meters, she caught her reflection, and sometimes she could swear it moved slower than she did. When she reached the records room, the security keypad blinked red. She pressed a bobby pin into the key slot and overrode the lock. The door clicked open. Stacks of folders lined the shelves. Each file carried a patient's name, diagnosis, and therapy notes. But the last section, mirror test sessions, was different. Only 5 patients had completed the test. 4 were alive. 1, Evelyn Ross, was dead. Clara opened Evelyn's file. Inside were photos from the session. Evelyn sitting before a mirror. Evelyn touching her reflection. Evelyn screaming at it. And finally, an image where the mirror showed no one at all. Clara exhaled slowly. Then something slid out from the folder, a small transparent chip. She inserted it into her laptop. A video loaded automatically. Evelyn's face appeared. Her voice shook as she whispered, "If anyone finds this, don't believe the doctor. The mirror test isn't therapy. It's a doorway." Static swallowed the last word. Suddenly, Clara heard a faint knock behind her. She spun around. The glass wall across the room shimmered, and through it, she saw Evelyn, standing still, eyes wide open. "Who are you?" Clara breathed. The reflection smiled. "Someone who failed the test." Then the power went out. Darkness consumed the room. Only the emergency lights flickered red. And in that glow, every mirror along the hallway began to breathe fog, forming across their surfaces, as if something alive waited behind them. When the lights came back, Dr. Lucien Harlow stood in the doorway. His calm face looked strangely pale. "Detective Vale," he said, his voice almost casual. "You shouldn't be here at this hour." "I'm investigating a murder," she said, stepping forward. "Unless you'd like to confess something?" He smiled faintly. "Confession? That's not how healing works here. The test only reveals what you hide. That's why it frightens people like you." "People like me?" "Detectives," he said softly. "The ones who think truth and guilt are different things." Before she could answer, he pressed a button on the wall. Every mirror around them flickered, and for a brief moment, her own reflection was gone. Her stomach turned cold. "What did you just do?" "The next session," he whispered, "is yours." Clara stumbled back, but the exit door sealed itself with a magnetic click. Red lights pulsed along the corridor. In the nearest mirror, her reflection slowly reappeared, smiling. But Clara wasn't. The walls of Glasshaven seemed to breathe. Detective Clara Vale stood frozen as the red emergency lights flashed across the mirrored hallway. Her reflection twisted with each flicker, moving like it had a life of its own. She slammed her hands against the door, but it didn't open. "Dr. Harlow!" she shouted. "End this game." A voice came through the intercom, calm, professional, almost tender. "It's not a game, Detective. You've been chosen for the mirror test." Static followed. Then silence. Clara backed away from the glass walls. Every panel reflected her differently. One angry, one scared, one crying. The building itself felt alive, feeding on her fear. Moments later, the floor lights turned white, leading her down a narrow corridor. At the end stood a silver door marked Test Room 06. It opened on its own. Inside, the air was cold and sharp. A single chair faced a large mirror. Above it, a projector displayed the words, "Face yourself." Clara sat slowly. A faint hum filled the room like a heartbeat trapped inside the walls. The voice of Dr. Harlow echoed softly from hidden speakers. The mirror test was designed to help patients confront their guilt, to see what their minds refused to admit. "Tell me, Detective, what are you hiding?" Clara clenched her fists. "I don't play tricks." The lights dimmed. Her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. "Show me what happened the night your partner died," the voice said. Her breath caught. No one here knew about that. The mirror began to ripple like water. Slowly, an image appeared, a dark alley, rain pouring down. Clara stood there, gun in hand, pointing at her partner, Detective Miles Hart. His voice echoed from the glass. "You were supposed to protect me." She stumbled back. "No, he turned the gun on me. I didn't shoot him." The reflection smiled cruelly. "Didn't you?" Her pulse thundered in her ears. The gunshot sound burst from the speakers. Clara screamed, pressing her hands to her head. The mirror flashed again and the alley faded. In its place stood Evelyn Ross, pale, calm, and whispering through the glass. "Now you understand. This place doesn't heal. It punishes." "Why are you doing this?" Clara whispered. "Because you came here to expose a murder," Evelyn said. "But you'll find more than one. Dr. Harlow's test isn't therapy. It's revenge." The mirror pulsed like a heartbeat. Evelyn's voice grew faint. "He doesn't test the guilty. He collects them." Clara reached out to touch the glass, and this time, her hand passed through. A freezing pull dragged her forward. She tried to scream, but her voice vanished in the light. The intercom clicked again, and Dr. Harlow's calm voice returned. Welcome to the other side, Detective. Let's begin your healing. The door behind her slammed shut, and every mirror in Glasshaven went black. Everything was silent. Detective Clara Vale opened her eyes to a blinding white glow. The room looked identical to the test chamber. Same chair, same mirror, but the reflection didn't move. It stared at her like a living portrait. She stood, but her steps made no sound. Her breath fogged the air, though the room was warm. On the wall, faint words appeared, written backward. You crossed the glass. Panic crept into her chest. She ran to the door. It didn't exist. Only endless mirrored walls stretching in every direction. Then a voice echoed behind her, familiar, soft, trembling. You shouldn't have come here, Clara. It was Evelyn Ross. Pale, calm, eyes glowing faintly silver. Clara whispered, Are you alive? Evelyn smiled sadly. Not anymore. But this is where the test keeps us, the ones who saw too much. The light dimmed. Around them, dozens of faint figures appeared inside other mirrors. Men and women, all wearing Glasshaven gowns, their faces pressed against the glass, whispering, begging. He collects us, Evelyn said. Our reflections. He calls it healing because it makes him feel innocent. Clara's throat tightened. Dr. Harlow? Evelyn nodded. He built the mirror test after his wife's death. Said he wanted to cure guilt, but he only cured his own fear by trapping it in others. Clara looked around. Every surface now shimmered with static light. Then, from somewhere above, she heard a heartbeat. Slow, heavy, mechanical. Thump, thump, thump. The mirrors pulsed with each beat. Evelyn reached out her hand. If you want to leave, find the heart. It's the only door back. Clara grasped her hand. Where is it? Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. In the doctor's reflection. Suddenly, alarms blared. The figures in the mirrors began to scream. 1,000 voices trapped between worlds. Evelyn's face flickered. He knows you're here. Go! Clara ran down a glowing corridor that stretched into infinity. With every step, her reflection lagged behind, then started running toward her instead. She tripped, hit the floor, looked up, and her reflection pinned her down from the other side of the mirror. It smiled with her own mouth. You wanted the truth? It hissed. Then take my place. The mirror cracked, light pouring through the fractures like blood. Clara screamed and everything went white. When the light faded, Clara Vale was no longer inside the mirror maze. She stood in a vast underground hall, walls of cold metal and glass, each panel glowing with faint silhouettes. Hundreds of faces stared at her from within. Some cried, some smiled. None were alive. A low hum filled the air. Wires hung like black veins from the ceiling, leading into a large cylindrical tank in the center of the room. The tank pulsed with crimson light. Slow, steady, alive. Clara took one shaky step forward. What is this place? Evelyn's voice echoed faintly, like a ghost carried by the walls. This is where he keeps the hearts he's stolen. Each one belongs to a patient who failed the test. Clara swallowed hard. He's not healing people. He's keeping them trapped. Yes, Evelyn whispered. Their guilt powers his machine. It feeds on confession, on pain. Clara approached the glowing tank. Inside floated something that looked both human and mechanical. A heart made of metal and flesh, beating slowly, pumping silver fluid through glass tubes. Etched into its surface were names, dozens of them. At the very bottom, Evelyn Ross. Clara pressed her palm against the glass. How do I stop it? Find his reflection, Evelyn said. Destroy it before it replaces you. The air trembled. The hum grew louder. A door opened behind her, and Dr. Lucian Harlow stepped out of the shadows, his white coat glowing faintly under the red light. He smiled gently. You've come so far, Detective. That's rare. Most lose themselves long before this room. Clara aimed her gun. You killed them. You trapped them here. Harlow tilted his head. Killed? No, I freed them. You can't punish what you can't see. The mirror test lets people face what they truly are, and in your case, that's someone who shot her partner. Her hand trembled. That was an accident. Was it? He asked quietly. Tell that to the reflection standing behind you. She turned. In the mirrored tank, her reflection pointed a gun at her. The same expression, the same fear, but it pulled the trigger first. The bullet shattered the glass. The heart machine screamed, spewing silver fluid across the floor. Sparks erupted. Alarms wailed. The trapped souls inside the mirrors began pounding from within. Louder, louder, louder. Harlow backed away, shouting, "Do you see what guilt does? It always breaks free." Clara fired again, this time at the ceiling. The metal beams collapsed, crushing part of the machine. The room filled with white smoke and a blinding light as the mirrors cracked one by one, releasing distorted faces that melted into air. Through the chaos, Evelyn appeared once more, fading, her eyes soft. "You've started what we couldn't. Don't stop now. The last mirror still holds him." "Where?" Clara shouted. "The therapy chamber," Evelyn whispered. "Break his reflection, and you break Glasshaven." The light consumed her. Clara stumbled through the smoke toward the exit tunnel, blood on her hands, the sound of alarms fading behind her. Behind the shattered glass, Dr. Harlow's reflection smiled, even though his real body was gone. Smoke filled the corridors of Glasshaven. Red lights blinked like dying stars above Detective Clara Vale as she pushed through the ruined hallways. The air smelled of burning metal and salt, the heart machine's blood spilling everywhere. She followed the emergency lights toward the therapy chamber, the place where every patient's test began and where every secret ended. The mirrored doors slid open on their own. Inside, the room was empty. Only the chair and one tall mirror stood untouched by the fire. Its surface shimmered like water, reflecting not the room but a different version of it. Calm, clean, untouched. Then, from inside the reflection, Dr. Lucien Harlow appeared. His coat was spotless, his voice calm, almost gentle. "You survived," he said, smiling. "I should congratulate you." Clara raised her gun. "I saw what you built, the machine, the hearts, the people you trapped." Harlow stepped closer to the glass. "They trapped themselves, Detective. I only gave them what they wanted. A place to hide from the truth." "You're lying." He chuckled softly. "Maybe. But tell me, who are you to judge me? You killed your own partner and buried the guilt behind your badge." Clara's jaw tightened. "You don't know me." "The mirrors do," he said. "They showed me your sin long before you walked in. That's why you were invited here. You needed my test more than anyone." The mirror rippled again. Now, Clara saw herself sitting in the chair, her reflection strapped in, screaming, struggling to breathe. "Stop this!" she shouted. "End the reflection," Harlow said. "And you end yourself. Which truth will you choose, the one you can live with, or the one that kills you?" The room trembled. Glass fragments from the hallway floated in the air like dust in a dream. Her reflection began to whisper her name, over and over. "Clara, Clara, Clara." She took a deep breath and stepped closer to the mirror. "You think guilt is power, Doctor, but guilt is what keeps us human." Then she fired. The bullet hit the glass. It didn't shatter. It bled. Crimson veins spread across the surface as if the mirror itself were alive. Harlow screamed from inside the reflection, pressing his hands against the barrier. His perfect calm cracked for the first time. "No! You'll destroy everything!" "That's the point," she said. She fired again. This time the mirror exploded, sending shards across the room like silver rain. The reflection of Harlow twisted, melted, and vanished in the burst of light. Clara dropped to her knees, covering her face as wind howled through the room. Every broken piece of glass on the floor flashed like a memory, all the trapped souls flickering free, their voices soft and grateful. "Thank you," Evelyn's voice whispered one last time. When the light faded, only silence remained. Clara looked up. The mirrors were gone. The walls were black, lifeless. But in the center of the floor, one final piece of glass remained, showing her reflection smiling, though she wasn't. Smoke drifted through the ruins of Glasshaven. The alarms had stopped. The machines were silent. Detective Clara Vale stood in the middle of the destroyed therapy room, surrounded by shattered glass that glittered like ice on the floor. The air was heavy, but she could finally breathe. She looked around for the exit. The steel doors now hung open, sunlight spilling through the cracks. The morning tide roared outside. She took one step forward and froze. From the last piece of glass on the floor, her reflection stared back at her. But this time, it didn't copy her. It smiled. "You think it's over?" the reflection whispered. "It never ends. You broke his machine, not the truth." Clara knelt, her heartbeat steady but cold. "You're not real." The reflection tilted its head. "Neither are you not anymore." The words cut through her like a blade. She lifted the shard slowly. The reflection in it began to change, showing the alley from years ago, rain pouring, gun in her hand. Her partner, Detective Miles Hart, stood before her again. "You told the world I turned the gun on you," his voice said. "But you pulled the trigger first." Tears stung her eyes. "It was an accident." Was it? The glass pulsed with light. She saw her younger self trembling, the gun shaking, the sound of the shot echoing through time. She remembered everything. The anger, the fear, the silence that followed. Clara dropped the shard. It hit the floor and cracked in two. Outside, the sea wind howled through the broken windows. She whispered to herself, "Then, maybe this place wasn't his prison. Maybe it was mine." She walked toward the exit. The light grew brighter, washing everything in white. Behind her, the last mirror shimmered one final time, showing Evelyn Ross standing peacefully beside Dr. Harlow, both fading into the glow. "The mirror never lies." Evelyn's voice echoed softly. "But sometimes, it forgives." Clara stepped into the sunlight. The ruins of Glasshaven reflected on the ocean waves, hundreds of broken pieces glittering across the shore, each holding a different reflection, each telling a different truth. She looked down at the water and saw her face for the first time, calm, human, and real. For now, the end.